Hello and welcome to another episode of Messy Magic. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm your host, Dee Guy, and this is the podcast where we talk about all things messy in life and we embrace the messiness of human life and the experience that we've been gifted with on this planet. I think we see so much perfection, so much content through filters these days that this podcast is really just about a real life and embracing the messiness and the magic that lies within the mess. If you can't hear, I'm sitting on the banks of the river near my house, and I found a little rock to perch myself on. And as I'm sitting here, there's some mangroves in front of me, and I can actually see some crabs that are sort of starting to reappear, emerge from the mud as I've settled, and it's kind of eerie. They're like wandering around really slowly, and I don't know what they're doing. But anyway, I think they're going to keep me company while I record this podcast today. As I record this, it's actually a special day today because today is the autumn equinox in the southern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, that's the spring equinox for you. And tomorrow is actually a new moon as well. So I feel like there's a lot of powerful stuff going on in nature at the moment, and I wanted to think about it from the perspective of our lives and what that means, what it might mean to us, and how we can embrace the energy of, what's going on in nature at the moment as the human beings that we are. I know we live in a really modern world. Obviously, we're surrounded by convenience and technology and all the demands of modern life, but we're still natural animals, really. And so things like the seasons and cycles and the moon absolutely affect us. And you might notice it more at some times of the year or at some, stages of a cycle, or some people might notice it more than others. But I really do believe that every one of us is affected in some way. And so I put a little bit of thought into today's episode. I did a little bit of research about what happens in autumn. Or I guess if you're in the northern hemisphere, you probably call it fall. We call it autumn mostly. And it's one of those, it's one of the in-between seasons. Spring and autumn are the in-between seasons of summer and winter. And the equinox itself actually means that both, the daylight hours and the nighttime hours are roughly equal. It's roughly 12 hours each of day and night, which means that it's pretty much the same in the north as in the south. And so here in the southern hemisphere, we're in autumn. Traditionally, autumn has been the season of harvest before the winter months begin. And so it's kind of bringing home the abundance that has been grown and harvesting everything that's been hard at work over the last couple of months before we begin to enter those colder months and kind of hunker down, I guess, and go into not survival mode, but into kind of hibernation mode in a way. And so it's also the season of shedding leaves. Lots of trees lose their leaves. Although again, in Australia, we don't have a whole lot of native trees that do lose their leaves at this time of the year. And there's only certain places within the country where you can see trees losing their leaves. But that is one of the natural processes that happens during autumn is shedding of leaves. We've also got birds preparing to migrate, and some animals, their mating instincts kick in at this time of the year as well. And so there's tons of stuff going on in nature that I think can be really useful for us if we choose to harness it. I find it really interesting to think about it like autumn being the harvest season. And so for you, maybe have a think about if there's anything in particular that you've been working on for the past, 6 months. Anything that is ready to be harvested, anything that's ripe to be brought home, any projects that you've been working on, any ideas that you've been having, anything that's ready to come to fruition. Now would be a really good time to tap into this autumnal energy and harness it, use that energy for yourself. I also think it's really interesting that this is a time of year that the trees lose their leaves, and I looked a little bit into this, and essentially the main reason that trees lose their leaves before winter is so that they can conserve energy during the colder months. It's a way of preparing themselves to survive winter. And it's also to allow them to minimize damage to themselves from winter weather. When it gets really cold, if there's frosts or maybe snow, then the branches and leaves can be damaged. So they lose their leaves in order to conserve energy and protect themselves. And so again, I was thinking we could apply this to ourselves. What is there in your life that you're ready to let go of? What is it that is holding you back? Is there anything that you feel is just not serving you anymore? And if you were able to let it go, to let it pass on, then you'd be able to move forward with more energy, or at least you'd be able to conserve energy during the colder months that are coming in. It's also, so as I said, it's a time of harvest. It's also a time of plenty, but it's also a time of decay. So we've got this kind of dichotomy of of plenty and of harvesting and abundance and bringing things home. But at the same time, things are growing older and are getting ready to potentially die off. So yeah, I just find that really interesting from a human perspective too. Like, what is it that is in your life that is ripening, is ready to take advantage of? And what is it that is growing old and really is ready to be left behind, to die off, to decay, and to conserve energy, ready to welcome in the new, abundant, fertile soils on the other side of winter. And so finally, just from the perspective of winter coming soon, how could you use the next couple of months during autumn to begin to slow down, to begin to conserve energy, to focus on what's most important to you, and to start to turn inward? I think in terms of this idea of hibernation, how can we use the cooler months and coming into the colder months to become more reflective, to focus on what's most important to us, and to kind of get that energy of coziness, coming home to ourselves and just reflecting and being with ourselves and being with what's most important to us. I hope you're hearing the sounds of nature that are around me as I sit here. It's actually been a lot noisier than I expected. There's waves from the river because there's a breeze today, and there's been several different types of birds behind me. I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I really love the changing seasons. I don't really have a favourite season. I always say I always say that it's a particular season, but then when the season changes, I say that it's something else. So I think realistically, I don't really have a favourite, but I do love and I really enjoy the changing seasons. I think it reminds us that we're alive, and it reminds us that time is always passing, and as the days roll on, we move through our lives, and it's really important to embrace what's going on in life right now and to live every day as it comes, because we won't be here forever. And as I wrap up this podcast, my favourite trees behind me are whistling in the wind and cheering me on, so I think it's time for me to go. But I hope you've had a beautiful equinox, whether you're in the southern or the northern hemisphere. I hope that if you're in the northern hemisphere that you did manage to get something out of this podcast. I think that you could swing it around the other way, absolutely, and embrace the energy of spring and summer as your seasons change. If you'd ever like to get in touch, you can always reach me at hello@messymagic.co, and I look forward to being with you again soon. And in the meantime, have a magical day.